a bit of competition.
Yeah.
That was always good.
Yes, it is. How did you find out about ET3?
There was 1.5 years ago in the summer of 2013. I investigated this maglev technology. I thought it was fascinating and a topic that only, that is not highlighted enough by the press and media at all.
Right.
And then, when investigating maglev, you discover there are different systems.
Okay.
And ET3 seems to have like the most lightweight system of maglev.
Most efficient.
And Daryl researched it in such a way to be able to propose the cheapest maglev possible.
Right.
Because many of these systems, like Transrapid, they're just way too expensive. They're never going to happen. Same with the JR Central. It's very interesting, but it's extremely expensive.
Yeah, the thing that sold me was the capsules, the individual capsules. So it's not a train anymore. You don't have to sit there and wait for people to get on and get off at every single station.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's genius.
Maglev is usually associated with a train.
Yeah. And that's what people, every time I talk to people about it, they immediately associate it with that. So it's you got to get that right out of it. This is the highway concept, not the concept.
Exactly.
When you first found out about ET3, how long was it before you were like, okay, this is it, and you became the licensee?
No, that was very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah, it was very quickly. As soon as I saw ET3, I immediately realized this has tremendous potential, and I could not understand why it's not all over the media. I was thinking every person with a strategic mind would immediately grasp the potential, but apparently this is not so. Although I do not understand why that is. I really do not understand. And then I had many questions. As soon as I learned about it, I had hundreds of questions. So that took me like a few months to get a picture, to imagine how it would work, to get many of these questions answered. And then fairly quickly after 2 months. Also, the business structure is, of course, very different than any ordinary business. So ET3 is not only an innovation, a tremendous innovation in technology, totally disruptive, very futuristic, but realistic as well. But it's also a complete innovation in the way to do business.
And what's your thoughts on that? Do you like the business plan? Do you think that there needs to work other places? Do you think it should be more of a traditional thing or no?
I think this is the way forward. Obviously, it's being thought out by a genius. Because all the modes of transportation that currently exist, we are consumers. We are forced to use it. You are forced to make the flight, or you're forced to either take the car or whatever. But it's outside. It's other people who are doing it. But here, people can really get involved. So they can in fact be one of the owners. They can be part of the team that makes it happen. And especially it's very appealing for poor countries as well. This is usually underestimated. You would think that with such a high-tech transportation system, the first countries would be like the wealthy nations to adopt it. But I see it differently. I see that this could be extremely interesting for developing nations, to skip a few steps.
Leapfrog over some of the
in fact, not leapfrog, but someone wrote me this weekend a horse jump forward.
Totally.
It's really a horse jump forward. They can skip faster trains, they can skip high-speed rail, they can skip many of the infrastructural steps that we have taken, and move right into the 21st century. And especially ET3 is really cheaper than any operation on rail, and I would say it's also cheaper than any operation on asphalt. Because to compare it with asphalt, you should not only look at the infrastructural costs, but also the operation, all the cars, all the gasoline that goes into it. So ultimately, I think it is really cheaper than any operation of rail and asphalt.
By far. We just finished this course called the Age of Sustainable Development, and they were talking about like transportation infrastructures in different countries and how that really helps out or affects the GDP of nations. And in Africa, there's almost no transportation infrastructure. So I see huge opportunities for them. That could go from the poorest nation on the planet to the richest nation because of the natural resources they have within there. We put ET3 system in there, able to import, export all of those natural resources. It's huge.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Developing nations have a lot to gain from ET3 because most people, when they think about such a system, they think about transporting passengers. Okay, that's of course very important, but transporting cargo is also extremely important. And the ET3 can also transport utilities. So it can transport fresh water, for example. Right now may be not such a big thing, but we also have to think about the future, decades ahead. And transporting fresh water over long distances could be extremely relevant decades from now.
Energy.
Electricity.
Because people are always like, well, solar doesn't work. What about when it's nighttime? You could be transporting that energy from the lit side of the planet to the dark side, with an ET3 system.
Exactly.
Bandwidth, high-speed bandwidth. Running brand new fiber trunks across the Bering Strait. Absolutely. Because that stuff going across the Pacific and the Atlantic, that's some old stuff now.
It's going to be also a fascinating engineering challenge. And that's why I still don't understand why many more people interested would be into, because it's such a great challenge, for example, for engineers to undercut the Strait of Gibraltar, to undercut the Bering Strait. So I would think many of these engineering companies, it would catch their attention, but apparently not so, or they are totally glued into the existing transport multinationals. I don't know
I think they have the blinders on and they see that huge cash cow coming in from their interests that they have with the oil and the traditional means of transportation, that they don't see the potential of the trillions coming in from the ET3 system. That's my only guess.
I guess so.
I don't know. I love how Bill James put it from JPOS. He said ET3 is the most elegant solution for global transportation. Absolutely. We're just talking about the Bering Strait as a solution to connect the continents. Do you see that possibly happening in our lifetime?
Well, I'm not really the expert on that, but it should not be so complicated, right?
You're
because the tunnel that's needed is only 4 meters in diameter.
Unlike the English Channel, which was
that was like 4 times larger. So people are currently building massive tunnels underneath cities. Like I read something in Seattle. They're building huge, massive tunnels. So a 4-meter tunnel, 4-meter diameter, is not so complicated. And this tunneling technology is improving very rapidly. So
those tunneling machines are really cool.
I don't understand why it's not a real feasibility study is not being done at the moment.
What's funny is Annika and I were we were having breakfast with Daryl and Brenda and one of our friends in Colorado Springs. We took to this restaurant that we love. And so my friend Chris, he didn't really know that much about ET3, and he was sitting next to Daryl, and he goes, "So Daryl, what's this whole ET3 thing?" And Daryl gave him this little card to read, a business card that kind of just one little paragraph sentence. So he reads it. He looks at Daryl and he goes, "So what's the holdup?"
Well, exactly. I also noticed, there are some people. For example, one business guy I spoke with in the Netherlands, I gave him a 1-minute explanation, and it seemed that within 1 minute he grasped it. So
it's cool to watch people that you start talking to it, and as you're explaining stuff to them, and then all of a sudden you see that light go on in their head, and they're like, "This is amazing." When are you guys gonna? Is this? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's, as often stated, it's a matter of diplomacy, innovation, and financing. So we're extremely much looking forward to the big financing going into this endeavor.
What are your thoughts with other disruptive technologies coming online, like the 3D printing and Bitcoin and the blockchain and stuff, and how is that going to play with ET3?
Well, I'm really focused on only ET3.
But do you think that those technologies will, like 3D printing, do you think that's a viable solution for printing tubes with some of the industrial 3D printers like contour crafting that can build a house in a day? Can they be utilized to build ET3 tubes and
honestly, I have no idea. 3D printers can print a tube of 25 meters in length. Yeah. Okay. I would still have to investigate how that works, because I'm not an expert in that. I'm more thinking at the moment still about traditional manufacturing of these tubes. But how does that work then? Do you need a printer of that size? Or?
It's actually, what they do is they set up this kind of crane system that goes around the perimeter of the footprint of what the house will be. And then they have like this composite material that's kind of like concrete, except it hardens way faster. And so the nozzle just goes around and starts printing however you have the foundation of the house, all the walls and stuff. And then once it gets to the point where the electrical and the plumbing needs to be inserted, then it lets go of that pump hose. It picks up the attachment that grabs the pipes and the electrical stuff, lays that stuff all in, and it's totally automated. So basically what they're doing is you feed the computer an AutoCAD of that, and it just goes and prints it all out.
Unbelievable. I would like to see it happening in reality, Well, what we should be investigating is like a drilling machine that can go underground, bore this tunnel of 4-meter diameter, but at the same time, perhaps, while it's digging the tunnel, maybe at the same time manufacture the tubes inside. What I'm really excited about also is the possibility of ET3 to be able to offer probably traveling for free. There could be two kinds of fares. So one fare is like the normal fare for a person who wants to work or relax on board, but there's also the possibility to engage in advertising, interactive advertising, where you have to make some choices every now and then. For example, based on the destination. So in your example, you're going to San Francisco, you want a lunch or a dinner, and you can already prepare to make a reservation, or you're going shopping and what are you looking for, or you need a new subscription or music, you want to be updated about the latest developments or something. People have time on board, and this is quality time. So the sponsoring could be so huge, in fact. Many of the multinationals would really like to have a few minutes of total attention of a passenger.
Yeah, because you can't get off.
You can't get off, and as long as the passenger is sort of forced, so to say, to make some choices, so we know he's really engaged. At that time, could be very, very valuable. So I really foresee that people could travel for free if they engage in this interactive advertising. Which is not something that you're forced to look at and doesn't really interest you, because that's how it goes on television. Just some advertisements come on, and 99% of the time, actually you don't want to see it. But this would be the advertisements or the information that you are interested in to see.
What are your thoughts on the security procedures?
Well, I think security procedures are very, very, very important. So someone in the consortium or a group should really be putting an effort into finding the most modern and the best scanners in every way. I foresee iris scan, fingerprint, checking on any undesired materials that has not be brought on board. These things would be extremely important if we want to facilitate international travel. and personally, I think that's my personal opinion. We should make a great effort to hopefully never partake in human trafficking, because that's one of the worst diseases at the moment on the planet. This is a horrific thing that children are forced to work in another country or whatever. So I hope we can do everything to prevent human trafficking taking place with such a modern transportation system. Another question I have for you is, if you would try, suppose you're a marketeer and you try to locate or define the group of people that would be most apt to understand and get excited about ET3, my personal opinion would be that kids, children who go to school
100%
would probably grasp it the quickest. What is your thought on that?
I agree 100%.
Okay.
I think a college tour for like a team of people to go talking about ET3 to the colleges, I think that would be the best. Those are the kids that are making the decisions here.
Yeah, maybe even high school.
Absolutely. High schools and colleges, I think, would be tremendously beneficial for us to.
We're just suggesting progress,
Exactly.
Evolutionary progress, healthy progress. Because at the moment when I take my daughter into a big city, she and we are forced to inhale the toxins, the exhaust fumes. We are forced. We don't have a choice. And so much talk about freedom, but health is extremely important. So I am forced to take her into an environment like a city where she's forced to inhale these toxic exhaust fumes. There really should be more opposition. And ET3 is a clean operation. Doesn't use a drop of fossil fuel. It's much cleaner than an electric car.
I don't think they care. The people that hand out their grant the right of ways and stuff, they don't care about that. All they care about
but they should,
Absolutely.
They should. And I'm a little bit surprised that by the lack of support from even the green lobby, which supposedly is a fairly influential lobby. I haven't heard any green advocate promoting ET3. I mean, it's bizarre. I'm almost suspecting them of,
fell.
Almost. I mean, I can't believe that people are so uninformed. Keep on promoting windmills and electric cars.
So, what's your vision for the Netherlands as far as how soon do you think it's realistic that you could start developing ET3 here?
The vision is good. It depends on the money, on the funding. As soon as the funding in place, and it looks like funding is coming in soon, then we can really start. And for the Netherlands, it's especially exciting because maglev, for example, United States, always a little bit difficult because there's a very large car industry. There is the airplane, also the building of airplanes industry. And here in the Netherlands, we don't have, we don't produce cars, right? There's a very small factory, that's it. We don't produce airplanes, we don't produce trains, we do not produce metros, So there are none of these manufacturing, which also means that we import everything. All the trains that you see, the metros that you see, all the cars that you see, they're all imported. So I would think that the person being in charge of the economy with a strategic mind would see that, hey, this is a great opportunity. In the past, we have been importing all of these transportation vehicles, and now there's a new chance to set up manufacturing in the Netherlands of a new mode of transport. So there should be less opposition to this idea and implementation in this country.
Do you think that you'll have less opposition as far as the bureaucratic stuff, the right-of-ways and stuff in the United States?
Well, I'm not sure. I would hope so. But also another interesting fact is, I guess the same in LA, our highways are already at a max, and the train track is also at a max. So I see it as we have no other choice but to develop new infrastructure, because these are at the max. They're daily traffic jams. Every morning, every evening there are traffic jams. It's not really nice for people to spend all this time in traffic jams. It's in fact, it's a loss. This time could be spent better. But also, if it's possible to build a new infrastructure transport system which allows for much faster traveling, and ET3 accomplishes that in two different ways. By increasing, not only by increasing the speed, but also comparing with trains, it's direct routing. This is a very interesting aspect. Which is, I guess, least understood by anyone, how this works. This direct routing is a tremendous innovation. That should be all over the media, describing how it works and what the consequences will be for the future. This is only possible because of the frictionless mode of transport. And so ET3 will save traveling time by these two different ways. And any nation or any economy that can accomplish such a reduction in travel times is just highly interesting. Also for the transport of goods, but especially for people. And now, if we want to traverse long distances, we are forced to use an airplane. Well, that's a kerosene-based operation. It's not so healthy, this for all of us. It's not so healthy, all this kerosene in the air. We're all inhaling this. It's really not so healthy.
Not to mention, it's a finite resource. It's eventually going to run out. Whereas,
for future generations, we need to keep some oil on the ground, because there are other applications, not transport, where oil is very necessary, plastic, whatever, So anyone with a long-term view would very quickly realize this is important for generations to come in, not the decades ahead, but how you call it, ages in the future. You need to keep some of that, not burn it up at this moment because we're so hungry. But this long-term view seems to be difficult for many people to handle. They want immediate gratification. But to get back to the air travel, there is no other alternative to air travel than ET3. In fact, ET3 is the only viable and it's sustainable alternative to air travel. So, and it's even faster. It's really great that we meet because ET3 is a little bit a digital operation at the moment, and for everyone who's really involved, as you have been for such a long time, it's really good to meet each other as well.
Exactly. It's the gig of a lifetime. I mean, I remember I first saw it on the movie Zeitgeist Addendum online. It's a free movie, and they talked about ET3. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I immediately made a Google alert. So anytime that ET3 evacuated tube transport, Daryl Oster, anything I could think of. So anytime there was like an article out there, I would get an email about it. I didn't hear anything for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
It's amazing. I also don't understand.
And then all of a sudden,
this Hyperloop crap.
No, it was before Hyperloop. My Google alert went off saying that it directed me to a website that the mayor of LA at the time had put out, asking for citizens to submit ideas on how to fix the traffic situation in Southern California. And somebody had submitted ET3, I think it was Nick, and it had a lot of action. People were liking it, they were asking questions, and so I went on ET3.com and sent them an email saying, hey, can somebody submit your idea? It's getting a lot of action, you might want to check it out. I didn't know it was, I didn't know that Nick had done it. And so then he called me because my phone number was on my email signature, and we talked for a long time, and then a week later, he called me and said, hey, I know it's last minute, but if you want to go to a house party tonight, Daryl and his wife Brenda are going to be there. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
This was like 2 years ago or something.
Yeah. And so we went to this party, met Daryl and Brenda,
Okay.
had a great talk with them, and at the end of the conversation I said, well, Daryl, you know what I do for a living is I build state-of-the-art, cutting-edge master control rooms for like the TV broadcast stations and stuff. And when you start building this thing, I want to build the master control rooms and do the integration of the audio and video in the capsules. And so that's how we developed our relationship.
Yeah. Right.
I can't wait to start designing.
We're all extremely
want to get my
impatient,
hands
you know.
dirty.
It's taking basically too long, you know, and we're all expecting it to go viral at some point, you know. Viral is the word, but I don't understand why it's not happening yet. In fact, you know, I don't know. Another thing that would be, you know, very nice, important, you know. One is that Hollywood pictures that are in the making and are futuristic should really incorporate ET3, but well, maybe that's difficult. But more easier should be the game developers, you know. So these popular games, people, these kids, they seem to be spending lots of times on games. I don't know anything about it. But I guess there are certain heroes in these games, and the heroes should be transported with ET3 in the games, because this is of exceptional importance. Because that's how the kids will see it and understand it, you know. If it's in their games, wow, you have all the children in the world, you know, who already understand it, because their hero is traveling with ET3. You know?
Exactly.
So you don't even need a website, you know. And if all the children in the world understand it, it's going to happen. Because their imagination, they already see it, you know.
Part of the world.
This is the way to communicate ET3 to the world, is if it's happening in the games that these kids are watching, you know. This is,
we have to target the younger generation for
Yeah,
sure. They
yeah,
have to be
yeah,
the main
yeah.
target.
Absolutely. Because some of their fathers are, I don't know, they have a job here, there, you know, and they give a presentation on school, and if we start explaining it to the father, you know, doesn't hear it, but if the children make a presentation about it in the school, and dad asks, you know, what are you presenting about, and he's forced to like pay his attention,
Right.
The children basically need to explain it to the adults.
Exactly.
That's how I see it, you know, that the children explain it to the adults, and the political parties, they have to, how to say it, you know, if this is becoming a hype amongst children even before it's being built, they are going to be voting if you, the political parties have to
cater to the what.
exactly, you know, they have to, you know, and they are the ones who are going to be traveling with this, you know. We're already going to be old, you know, when it's globally, it doesn't happen within 5 years.